And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in life transitions, home care, and the senior living industry.
And I'm Corey Sirota, a clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss.
Coming right up on the first half of today's show, the inspiring story of Maayan Ziv, who was born with spinal muscular atrophy and uses a wheelchair. She has made it her mission to improve accessibility across Canada with her app called AccessNow that is attracting hundreds of thousands of people and building owners across the country. Corey, she's going to be coming up very soon. How are you doing? It's cold. There's a storm coming. Omicron's still there. You hanging in there?
I am, I would say, as I said to you earlier, by a thread. Right now, by a thread. You know, this kind of thing perks me up, doing the show for sure. But oh my gosh, between the cold, between the COVID, between the isolation, oh my gosh, I feel grateful though, Matt, that I at least have my husband and my daughter around to converse with, you know. For those living alone, please reach out.
Yes, please reach out. We try to say that every week, no doubt about it. And they're saying that, you know, this weekend may be the peak. Fingers crossed. You want a little pick me up? I'm telling you, Corey, I saw this Coach Cal, this little guy. I don't know if you saw this. If you want to get a smile on your face, just Google Coach Cal, C-A-L. He was on Ellen, so just Coach Cal or Ellen DeGeneres.
Okay.
And a little motivational speaker, Canadian, and they brought him on just a dynamo. So check that out if you are looking for some positivity. And talk about positivity, there was a fantastic article about Claire Webster today in the Gazette. You saw that, right, Corey?
That's right. Claire's a good friend of ours and a great colleague.
Absolutely. We've had her on the show a few times, and congratulations, Claire, just talking about her caregiving journey for her mother who had Alzheimer's and everything she's doing at McGill for dementia care. So check that out in the Montreal Gazette today. All right, Corey, what do we have on the second half?
We're going to be talking about growing trends of mobile healthcare services. That is coming up during our newly assigned Helping Moms and Dads segment, and it's just after 3:30.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. You know, with the pandemic, mobile healthcare services have really gotten popular. We're going to have someone that does blood tests and diagnostics. We're going to have another couple that does in-home fitness. So that should be quite interesting.
Absolutely. But before that, we are very excited to have Maayan Ziv on the line. From a young age, Maayan challenged norms and worked within her community to increase awareness of disability issues and improve accessibility. Living with muscular dystrophy, and she's a wheelchair user, Maayan is a passionate and relentless advocate for creating a more accessible world. In 2015, Maayan founded AccessNow. It's an app to map the accessibility status of locations worldwide. So cool. She was recently named as one of Canada's top 40 under 40. Now, here's the thing. She's only 30 years old. So I can't wait to have this interview. Maayan, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Thanks so much, Corey and Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start right at the beginning. Can you please share your story with us?
Yeah. So I grew up with a disability. I have used a wheelchair throughout my life. And, you know, really as long as I can remember, I've been navigating a world that really hasn't been built with me in mind. And so, you know, I grew up in Toronto with my two sisters and my mom and dad. And every time we would go anywhere, whether I was, you know, starting out at school or taking a vacation or, you know, when I grew up and became more independent, traveling on my own or working, accessibility has always been kind of that number one question. You know, is it going to be accessible when I get there? Am I going to face barriers and steps at entrances? Or, you know, is it going to be something that I can enjoy? And so it was really that experience, that question, and the frustration that I was having every time I'd show up and I wasn't able to access a space that really motivated me to kind of look around and think, you know, if there aren't any solutions, well, I guess it's time for me to build my own.
It's just amazing, you know, and you are a real advocate, but some of those challenges that you face, Maayan, and those frustrations, it's amazing. You look up some of the stats. I mean, can you give us an idea of actually how many people use wheelchairs in Canada?
So in Canada currently, there's roughly 1 in 5 individuals who experience a disability in general. So that might be someone who has a mobility-related disability. That might be someone with an invisible disability. But it really varies, from person to person. And we don't actually have like the specific details on, who is a full-time wheelchair user all the time. But, on a macro level, there's at least something like 60 million people who use wheelchairs. And so that's not specific to just Canada. And a lot of people who aren't, considered as part of that statistic. But it gives you an idea of, how many people are trying to navigate a world, from the perspective of using a wheelchair specifically.
It is in fact mind-blowing statistics that you are sharing with us. I have to say I'm in absolute awe. I'm so with you when I love the idea of you lived experience. You said there was missing a tremendous need and you went out and you did it. You created this app, AccessNow. So please tell us about the app and the beginning days in 2015.
Yeah, so I started, I was studying my master's degree in digital media. And at school, we were just thinking about, what are the problems in our own lives? What is around us currently that's kind of an obvious need that we might be able to address attention to? And each, student was kind of doing this on their own. And for me, in the first week of classes, we all wanted to go out, to a restaurant and celebrate the beginning of the year. And everyone had picked this one restaurant off campus. And I was kind of getting ready to go over. And again, the same question, is it actually accessible? No one really knew. And that was the spark that motivated me to start thinking about, what if there was just a simple app or website that would let me ask this question? Is this restaurant accessible to me? Does it have a ramp? Does it have an automatic door? Does it have an accessible washroom? And so AccessNow really developed out of that specific need. So today, AccessNow is exactly that. It's a platform that lets people with and without disabilities discover the accessibility status of places around the world. So if you're looking for a restaurant or a cafe or a hotel or a park or literally anything you might think of, chances are you might discover the accessibility status and the specifics of a space on AccessNow.
So smart, really brilliant, Maayan. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt and Corey here, and we're with Maayan Ziv. By the way, just recently nominated as one of Canada's top 40 under 40, and we're talking about accessibility and specifically about this amazing app called AccessNow. So that's the beginning days in 2015 when you started out. Things really started to ramp up, and can you give us just a bit of the story on how it's progressed? And you got a real bump in 2019 with some federal government funding, I understand.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, those early days starting at school, it was me and a few friends that convinced them to share information on AccessNow. It was a really local map initially, and we all kind of added information about our own experiences with accessibility in downtown Toronto. And, from those first few hundred listings, I realized the potential to really help this grow. And over the course of, a few years, we were able to connect with people with disabilities and just in general, people who were interested in getting involved to share more information on the platform about places that they had visited and businesses that they knew that were establishing a really great level of accessibility for people. And so to date, we've been able to share, over 200,000 locations in the regards of accessibility on the platform. We've shared information in over 35 countries around the world. And in 2019, we got this great boost, as you mentioned, Matt, from the federal government with an investment of $2.7 million to really help establish AccessNow as a Canadian resource. And that really helped me go from, an initial crowdsourced, bootstrapped operation with some folks that were pouring in their own, time and effort and resources to really helping build this into a solidified tech company.
Nice.
It's incredible what you're doing, and I want to hear more about it. I want to hear about how the app works, but we have to go out to traffic. So when we come back, first I want to hear how each and every one of us can make a difference in improving accessibility. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota, along with my co-host, Matt Del Vecchio, and we're talking to Maayan Ziv, living with muscular dystrophy, and she's a wheelchair user. Maayan is a passionate and relentless advocate for creating a more accessible world. She's a creator of the app called AccessNow. Maayan, I'm sure this could go on for the rest of the show, but just some suggestions on how each and every one of us can help make a difference in improving accessibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that accessibility is really just for people with disabilities. And, historically speaking, accessibility issues have really not been part of mainstream conversations. But if you think of every time that you watch a video with captions, or you hear announcements on a subway station, let's say, or, you even cross the street and push a stroller over a curb cut, you're benefiting from a form of accessibility that's been intentionally designed to support people with disabilities. So when, my call to action is always that, every person has a responsibility to contribute to making our world more accessible and inclusive. And that's something as simple as sharing a review about a place you've visited in your own neighborhood on the AccessNow app is one more instance that helps connect people to an accessible experience.
Maayan, you're bringing up such a good point because, we were talking about wheelchairs, but it's so much beyond wheelchairs. We're involved here with a lot of seniors and their challenges. And when we were talking beforehand, you were mentioning, some of the information you're getting out there just isn't for wheelchairs. A simple thing for a senior using a walker is they're going to benefit as well. And so good for you for really pushing this agenda forward. And I think, the private sector certainly could take a leadership role regarding accessibility and combine with your AccessNow. So can you give us an example or a couple of examples of how the private sector can help out?
Absolutely. And I think, Matt, you make a really good point about who accessibility benefits. It can be literally anyone. And at some point in your life, whether you think you need it or not, accessibility will become an integral component to how you live your own life, every person. And so when we talk about the private sector, I think, again, when you open your doors physically or digitally to an accessible experience, you're engaging over $13 trillion in annual consumer spending that the disability market kind of capitalizes on. And so if you think about businesses that sign up on the AccessNow platform, reaching our audience, connecting and sharing information, that's one of the first ways that you can actually engage our community. Just by sharing information, you let people know what about your own business is accessible and help people understand how they can engage with you. So, from whether it is you are fully accessible or not, or on a journey to become more accessible, all of that transparency adds so much to creating a relationship with the community that depends on it. So, we encourage people at AccessNow, whether you're an individual living with a disability, you're a small business owner looking to engage a new community, or even a government thinking about how do you create access for citizens on a wide scale, there's really a touch point for every person to get involved. And we always encourage people to reach out at accessnow.com and engage with us. Let us know what you're working on, what you're doing, and ways in which we can amplify that work as well.
That's the voice of Maayan Ziv, who is an advocate and the creator of AccessNow, helping the community gain access or better accessibility worldwide at this point. Give us a little snapshot of how the app works. Like, for example, how can I rate a building, a store, etc.?
Happy to. So it's super simple. If you think of any map-based program or app, or even Google Maps, it's really simple and works very similarly. If there's a place, let's say a coffee shop in your neighborhood that you've been to and you know the accessibility about, you'd be able to search for that place on the app. You get, a prompt that lets you determine whether it's a green thumbs up, fully accessible from your own perspective, and then add a few tags. Like, let's say there's an automatic door, you could select that. You could write a personal review about what you experienced at that place, or add photos in as well. And so every contribution really counts and contributes to the whole. But let's say you're just looking for information. You could use the platform to discover new places that you don't know about in your neighborhood or around the world, and discover if those places actually meet your needs. So you can filter the platform, determine, let's say you're looking for spaces with Braille menus or scent-free spaces. We've got a wide variety of different types of accessibility that are present on the platform. And this is really to signal that, accessibility means different things to different people. So the more that we share, the more that we can support people who are looking for those specific attributes.
Absolutely. That's Maayan Ziv, recently named as one of Canada's top 40 under 40. We're talking about accessibility and the app called AccessNow. I've downloaded it, Maayan. It's simple to use. And I know you're not the type to sit around and resting on your laurels here, Maayan. So what's next for the app? What's next for you?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm very ambitious in terms of the goal that we've set at AccessNow is to share information about accessibility of all places around the entire world. It takes, a community, a global connected network to make this happen. And so our sites are set on that, sharing information everywhere. Connecting with people in cities across Canada is our primary focus right now, and engaging people to share with us their own experiences, whether they are personal or whether they run businesses and want to connect with our audience. That's the goal. So the more, the better.
It's so amazing, Maayan. What's some of the feedback you've gotten?
When I started out, it was obviously a very personal experience. But I knew, just based on having friends with different disabilities or just reading stories online, that if we would build something that could reach people, this could be pretty powerful. And I think, this is a really tough thing to do, to create change on such a wide scale that really impacts people's human rights. The stories that I have heard from people with different lived experiences is really what gets me through hard times. So people reaching out and sharing, how accessibility impacts their own daily living and how AccessNow has helped them find, a sense of connectedness to their community. People sometimes, experience changes in their mobility throughout their lives, and finding new sources of information can be really challenging to figure out, how am I going to do the things that before I might have taken for granted? And so, those testimonials, those personal examples on how accessibility is meaningful to people and how through the AccessNow platform we've found a sense of community, a sense of purpose to create change in this world is really one of the most powerful and magical experiences, I've ever had. So I feel very grateful to be in the middle of it all.
As you should, and you are creating that change, Maayan. Thank you so much for coming on to Life Unrehearsed, Maayan. So just how can people download the app, AccessNow? What would you suggest?
Super simple. It's AccessNow, one word, on the App Store or Google Play Store or accessnow.com.
All right. That's activist and recently named one of Canada's top 40 under 40 and the creator of AccessNow, Maayan Ziv. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
All right, Corey, what do we have coming up on the second half?
We will be talking about the growing trend of mobile healthcare services. That's coming up during our Helping Moms and Dads segment,